A very good evening to each and every one of you, and welcome to this evening's Cooperative Party Zoom Live event. And our topic today is why we need to address food poverty. My name is Abigail Marshall-Katung, and I am the NEC rep for England North, as well as a councillor in Leeds City Council. My remit is I'm the scrutiny chair for infrastructure, investment and inclusive growth, and of course, the food champion of the council. So this particular event is really, really close to my heart. So I'm really pleased to welcome each and every one of you this evening, and thank you very much, most especially to our two speakers, Stephanie and Tanya. But before I introduce our speakers, I would like to kick off with a few tips on how we can make it interactive for everyone to take part today. So firstly, if you are hard of hearing, you can view captioning by pressing the CC icon on the bottom tools panel of your phone or your computer. The Zoom call is being recorded. Many of our members cannot access it live, so we will make it available to view via the Co-op Party's YouTube channel. So if you don't want your image to be seen, please kindly remove yourself off the screen by turning off your video, and you just go to audio only. You can also be muted to make the content of this, you've all been muted to make the content of this call clearer by preventing interruptions and any background noise. So only those speaking will have their sound enabled. When it's your turn to speak, Izzy's on the background, our lovely Izzy, she will send you a message asking you to unmute yourself, and all you need to do is just click on the screen to unmute yourself. So after we've heard from today's speakers, we will hold a question and answer session. There are two ways you can ask a question. You can either raise your virtual hand or post it in the chat box. And finally, before we start, I want to emphasize that the Cooperative Party believes that our cooperative values should be reflected in our actions as well as in our policies. We want all members and all our event participants to feel safe and welcomed and respected in our party. So please ensure that you abide by this by making your contributions today. I look forward to hearing from our speakers today, and of course, your questions. So now I would like to introduce our lovely speakers. Just to let you know that one of our speakers today, Alice McDonald, who is the campaign director for Hungry for Action and our prospective parliamentary candidate for Norwich North, might be joining us. There's a breakdown at the moment with her. So as soon as she comes in, I will let you know. But just to let you know, her thoughts and best wishes are with us at the moment. We also now have two very brilliant speakers, Stephanie Slater. Stephanie is the CEO for School Food Matters, who teach children about food and improve their access to healthy, sustainable food. So I'm looking forward to hearing you, Stephanie. We've also got Tanya Noon. She is the director of Kangaroo, a community investment company, CIC, that provides a digital solution to food poverty. So without further ado, I will call you in, Stephanie, to kick off for us, if you don't mind. So over to you, Stephanie, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. What a lovely opportunity. I'm very glad to be here tonight to talk with you all. I actually have some slides, and I have been, I'm able to share my screen. So I'm just going to do that quickly. And then if we could have a little bit of a thumbs up so that I know you can see. Okay, everybody is good. I'm just going to do one more other little presentation here. No, I'm good to go. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So School Food Matters. There's a few words on the screen there, but I don't expect you to read them all. But basically, we exist to teach children about food and to improve their access to healthy, sustainable food during their time at school. We provide fully funded programs to schools so that children, teachers, parents can engage in food education at no cost to them. We know that schools are absolutely strapped, and we don't want cost to be a barrier to engagement. So we have been working in this area, or I started the charity 16 years ago. I started it thinking I would have the food system in school sorted out in about, I thought 2 years tops. So 16 years later, we're still there. But what we are able to do, because we are out in schools every single day, we use the lessons learned from working with teachers, parents, children to influence government policy. So the other part of our work is campaigning, because we know that real change happens with policy. So that's the start of it. And why did it start? Well, it started because of this chap on the right who was star of the day on that particular day, because he was starting primary school, and I was absolutely appalled at the food on offer at the school. Thankfully, what you're seeing there is delicious, because this is what they had before. And as a parent who had lived in another country and arrived in London and popped them into the state primary school, I was really surprised by this sort of fait accompli. This is what school dinners is like. And I thought to myself, you know what, we can do better than that. As I said, I thought I was going to sort it out really quickly. Then I realized that school food procurement and working in local authorities and working in schools is super complicated. So I had to sort of be patient and chip away. And thankfully, after 4 years, we managed to transform the food on offer at 38 primary schools in one London borough. And because of that, I was invited by Department for Education to be part of the expert panel to look at the whole school food system. So that's a bit of a background to the charity. And I think one of the important things to say here is that back in 2007, when I founded the charity, it was all about the quality of the food. I wanted to fix a problem that we saw on a plate. Now, it makes me sad every single day that we're now talking about access to good food. It's a complete change since I began the charity. I think possibly the best thing to do now is to bring this to life a little bit with a 1-minute film, because I think the children talking about food is going to be more powerful than me.
This is a very special school. Everyone in this school gets access to free school meals, and that makes me feel grateful for where I live. Having filling school lunches makes it easier to concentrate on lessons.
Because we can't really work on an empty stomach.
You can chat with friends whilst you eat, and it's just a relaxing time.
Some people are struggling, and even though they might not see it to school, it's just easier if everyone just has free school meals.
If everyone had a hot meal at school, yeah, they'll have some energy for the day, because they would have eaten something instead of just going on an empty stomach for the whole day. As some kids are not as privileged as others.
I think it's important that every child across the country gets a free meal, because if you don't really have enough money to get breakfast and dinner, you at least get a meal at school. So you get at least one a day.
So heartbreaking every time I see that. And this is just our filmmaker who gave his time to go and talk to children so that we could really bring the voice of the children into the conversation, because frankly, nobody was listening. And I guess I wanted to sort of give you the voice of the children so that you can understand where we're coming from. And I really wanted to just go through a few details. You saw that stat in the presentation. 1/3 of children living in food insecurity aren't eligible for free school meals. I mean, that is a shameful statistic. And that comes from the Child Poverty Action Group. They reckon the figure is around 900,000 children are missing out on good nutrition. And that is because of the very draconian threshold that has been in place for so many years. 7,400 earned income. Household income. I mean, that's before benefits, but we're talking about hardworking people who do multiple jobs to try and pay their bills. And the minute they edge over £7,400, they lose their entitlement to free school meals. It's shameful. So we've been campaigning on this for years now with other organisations. And I don't think we're there, but we're beginning to convince a few mayors, as you will have seen in the news. London Mayor has committed to Key Stage 2. Universal obviously is funded by, sorry, infants are funded by central government. And we now have Key Stage 2 free school meals in London, but that sets up a postcode lottery, and that sets up unfairness so that children in school in London, their cousins and siblings in other parts of the country aren't experiencing that. And then of course, secondary school, what happens? Families don't stop being poor when they go to secondary schools. So, and we're trying to remove the stigma of being a free school meal kid by talking about universalism. Lots to be done. We know that families are getting poorer. You know, we all read the papers, we all understand about the cost of living crisis. We know that the new data on free school meals, it's gone up again. So 22.5% in 2022, and now it's gone up another percentage point and a bit, so that families are getting poorer. But that benefits threshold has not changed. It's set up inequality across the country. We know that if you live in the Northeast, you're going to have a much higher odds of needing a free school meal than you are if you live in the Southeast. So, you know, it's a completely at odds with a levelling up agenda. And the other thing to understand is that if you're not eligible for free school meals, you're not eligible for the support during the holidays. So our friend here, Marcus Rashford, who has been a fantastic figurehead, campaigned very hard to make sure that holiday provision was in place. But unless you're eligible for free school meals, you can't access that. And of course, then there's the pupil premium. So schools rely on pupil premium to support their most vulnerable children. You can't access that unless you're eligible for free school meals. And we know that we are falling behind in England. Scotland and Wales have moved forward on this. In Northern Ireland, the threshold is double. So we are lagging behind here, and we need to do better. So our work is cut out as we hurtle towards a general election. So that's going to be a real focus for it. This is what we think school food should be like. And I'm going to finish up soon because I know I've been given 10 minutes and I could go on. But this is how we see a perfect school food system. We always need to talk in the round. So you see, I've employed the Venn diagram here because there are many things at play here. We need equitable access for all the reasons I've described to you. We need fairer funding so that the complexity around school food funding is sorted out so it's easier for schools to understand. We need quality assurance because the last thing we want to do is get government investment in school food and the quality be so poor that families don't want to take it up. So we need to make sure that the quality is there. So every pound invested by government or local mayor ends up in good nutrition. And we know we can do better. And the reason we need to do better is because, unfortunately, despite all the work we did with the school food plan, the one thing that the government didn't do out of that work was monitoring and compliance. We have school food standards, they're enshrined in law, but no one's looking. So that's another piece of the jigsaw that has to happen. So all those children that most, like the little girl said, if you don't get breakfast and dinner at home, free school meal could be your only hot, nutritious meal. So we want to make sure it's the very best it can be. I'm going to pause there because we've got a lot to talk about. And I'm going to end on a nice photograph to cheer you all up so that I haven't made you all miserable. It can be brilliant. Some schools do it brilliantly, and it absolutely pays dividends, both in mental health, happiness, good nutrition, and ability to learn. So that's what we have to remember when we're talking about schools. We're increasing children's life chances by making sure they have everything they need to learn. I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. You couldn't have put it better than what you have just presented to ourselves, especially when you hear from the mouth of children. One of those kids said, without food, we can do nothing. You can't do anything on an empty stomach. So everything that we are and everything that we do without food, we really have no chance of survival. And if I remember during the pandemic, putting Rashford on there has just reminded us of the stat. I mean, I don't want to get political now, but we do remember all that fiasco about free school meals and the U-turns with the Tories. But we are where we are. And thank you so much that we are here now. And the fact that you're pushing for every child to be on free school meals, have a hot meal, that will make a huge difference in the lives of all our children. And it's one of the clear reasons why we are fighting food justice as a cooperative party. And of course, with each and every one of you here today. So thank you, Stephanie, for that. Right, I shall now bring in Tanya Noon. Over to you, Tanya.
Many thanks. I'm also going to try and share a slide. Does that come up? Yep, okay,
Yep.
Great. Just to do a slideshow, hopefully it works. Yes, is that good? So good evening, everyone. As Ivy says, I'm Tanya Noon, a director of Can-Do, spelt with the K, but it is based on a can-do attitude using UN Sustainable Goal, the red colour of no poverty. Also on the call that people may know is John Boyle, who is a director of us as well, and Joanna West, who is our new manager of Can-Do. So I also want to welcome them to the call this evening. Can-Do came about, I work for a consumer co-op and I work with a lot of food banks, and it came about as the number of food banks obviously we're working with, and around dignity and access to food. So we had a discussion about, well, why on earth are we taking food from supermarkets into other warehouses, using transportation to transport it all around our country and then back to providers who need it. So Can-Do was formed a couple of years ago now during lockdown. So so this is a digital app, and it is to eliminate the need for food banks, hopefully by streamlining emergency access to food, as it says on the slide, by enabling users to go directly into a cooperative shop to shop. So there is no other technology out there at the moment that enables this. There are some technologies of apps that are in forms of vouchers, but not in this format. So we worked with VME. So VME is a worker cooperative that designed our app for us. We are working with a number of cooperatives. The main one at the moment is the Art of England Cooperative, because they use the VME systems, and we are in talks with the other cooperatives as well. So this is the structure, and the background is, existingly is that, our manufacturers deliver everything to the co-op warehouse, redistributed to the different co-ops. But if we could remove the next number of barriers, so that the user of a food bank or somebody who needs access to emergency food can come directly to the co-op and purchase their food. So this would mean that the individual has an uplift of an app on their telephone, on their mobiles. We have done research into that, so if anybody wants to ask the question at the end how that works, we're more than happy to do that. So we've done a few trials with the directors originally, and then we got some funding to trial out with some users from Hinckley Food Bank. So this enabled us to work directly with the users and got the feedback from them. So we all know that, the inequalities, and a little bit about Stephanie saying, it's about having dignity for people. I'll talk about the reports we've had from the individuals and how it's around, we just frame ourselves on dignity and being dignified and being able to shop in a dignified way and not have to rely on a voucher being given to you, and not relying on the types of food you're expected to eat. This is about you eating what you feel you wish to eat, and people with allergies, etc. It's quite difficult. So VME is a worker co-op, like we said. They built and designed our software for us, and they have gifted us to Can-Do. So we're really appreciative of the support of the cooperative networks that we have. This you won't be able to see, but this is how it works. So the reason that we're taking longer than normal is because this goes through all the systems in the background. So if somebody purchases their items in a co-op, not only do we see what they're buying, but it goes right through the systems of the back office of co-ops as well. So they can determine as well and find out how much people are spending on certain items, how much reduced to clear items they're buying, etc. So also then we obviously reconcile that in the background. So these supermarkets are getting full price for their products. So the monies that we're raising from co-ops and also individuals and local authorities is the way in which Kangaroo will be sustainable. So I've mentioned right at the beginning, it was around the no poverty, the no hunger, similar to Stephanie here. It's around how can we help people have a better quality of life, really. These are some pictures, if you can see it. So these are the trials. So you go in as a shopper, you shop in a normal way, and you're served in a normal way, and you pay in a normal way. And there's an app on your phone, and the system just connects to that, and you get a receipt in the normal way. This is about shopping without anybody judging you, anybody saying anything about you. It's around you going into a shop and leaving without being judged. It's about going in the shop and coming out with fruit and vegetables. It's about coming out with medicines. It's about coming out with items that you want to eat, not the type of beans somebody has donated for you, but the type of brand you particularly would like to eat. So it's not against any food banks. We know food banks play a really major part out there. I and Kangaroo feel, you know, we want to work with all the food banks about the underlying issues that people have in food banks. We shouldn't have any issues around access to food. We have enough food in this country to feed people. It's just the better ways of doing it. So I don't know if you can hear this, but this little video. Thank you. The trial, we did 4 different categories. So we did 2 adults and a child. We did an adult and a child. We did 2 adults with 5 children and a single adult. And so they all had the app themselves, and they all went, and we either uplifted £25 a week or £50 a week onto their apps, and they went into the shop. Originally, they thought they had to spend it all in one go. So some of them spent it for the week, and then this was for a 4-week trial. So on the 2nd, 3rd week, people started to adjust their way they were shopping. So they could go to the stores 1, 2, 3 or times a week, whichever they preferred to shop. But most of the money was spent. Some people underspent because they're so savvy with their money. They're so savvy shopping. It's brilliant to see. And I think from the retailer's point of view, as I said, they're getting the full value at the beginning, and they can also see how Kangaroo customers have helped to reduce their waste, has helped to obviously shop in that dignified way. So we'll take questions at the end, but I've given you just a quick overview, hopefully, of what Kangaroo is. You can go on our website, kangaroo.coop, and have a look at who we all are. And there's another video on there as well as how the actual app works. But happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya. That is simply amazing. You just love it when technology, that is completely new to me. So I was just listening and I went, wow, I need to talk to you straight after this. Obviously with food banks and us hoping that someday we can actually stop food banks, and we're kind of moving from the food bank model to the food pantry model as well, to kind of give people a bit of dignity in what they actually get in terms of going to food banks and going to food organizations where they can purchase foods with slightly less than what we would buy when we go to supermarkets. So hearing from yourself this evening is actually very, very comforting. And I'm hoping that I will get a lot of people asking questions about this app. I definitely have got a few for you, but I will be calling you straight after this. I have just been told as well that Alice McDonald has been able to join us. So that's really great. Please don't forget, just put all your questions down. And once we get to the Q&As, I will call you in. So if you've got questions for Tanya and for Stephanie, just hold on to them and I will come to you. So Alice McDonald, you are welcome. And thanks for joining us this evening. Over to you.
Thank you. And I'm very sorry, my car has broken down and it's been
That's all right.
so they're probably going to call me at some point because it's still not fixed. But
Okay.
I'm very glad to join you. I'm Alice. I am here with two hats on. I run a global campaign against hunger called Hungry for Action, which is a coalition of about 40 NGOs from Global Citizen and Save the Children and World Vision to very grassroots African-based organisations like the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. But I'm also here as the Labour and Co-operative, very proud to be a Labour and Co-operative party candidate for Norwich North, which is in the east of England. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both, a little bit more about the global situation in terms of the food crisis writ large, and then bring it back a little bit to Labour Party policy, because we're all here because we want a Labour government. Well, we're not only here because we want a Labour government, but we all do want a Labour government. So just putting it in that context as well. So just to start with, in the overview of this event, it spoke about the Sustainable Development Goals, a set of 17 globally agreed goals to end poverty, to defeat inequality and to tackle climate change. Every single country signed up to those. David Cameron signed up to them in 2015 for the UK. We're halfway through, but we are very much not halfway there. And hunger, goal number 2, achieving zero hunger, is one of the ones where we've gone really backwards. There's an annual report that comes out on the state of food insecurity in the world. This year, it showed that 785 million people are hungry. That's equivalent to the entire population of the US, and I think it's the EU, not Europe, but it's massive. It's slightly down on last year, but it's still 120 million more than before COVID. So we are simply not doing enough to tackle hunger globally. And when you kind of dive into figures even more, 250 million people are facing acute food insecurity. So basically a few steps away from famine. And we know in particularly regions like East Africa, people are really are on the brink of famine. And when you bring it down to looking more issues that affect people in the UK as well, 3 billion people can't afford a healthy diet. And that will include a lot of the people in places where you live, where I live in Norwich, who just can't afford to buy food that is healthy. And just to touch on who it's affecting and where, unsurprisingly, in every single country, it's the poorest people who are most affected. Also in work, people who are working in all continents are very much affected by that. When I speak to people in Norwich North, the people who run the food banks here, who work in the pantry models, they are saying they are seeing increasingly more people who are in work coming to use the food banks, and that simply should not be the case. And one other note is that food, according to that same report, it's called the State of Food Insecurity in the World. Food insecurity is more prevalent amongst women than men in every single region of the world. So I think there is very much a gender lens to these issues that we are talking about. So I've touched a little bit on Norwich North as well. And the campaign that I work on, we kind of spotlight a few kind of big causes of this. Conflict, climate change, the cost of living, and really fundamentally weak leadership, because these things are not inevitable. Obviously, the war in Ukraine has had a huge impact on food security and the food crisis writ large. There was an agreement called the Black Sea Grain Deal. It's not very easy, and I always get it slightly wrong, that was brokered by the UN that allowed the export of grain to countries like predominantly Africa. That broke down a few months ago. And that, as the UN Secretary General said, is going to end a lifeline to millions of people. India has also just put a ban on the export of some forms of rice. And again, rice is a huge staple for many people, particularly on low incomes and in poorer countries. So again, I think we can see that in the next few months, this is going to be potentially getting even worse. Climate change, again, it's just having an impact on everything, but it's making it harder. We're seeing it right now with a heat wave, hottest day of the year, I think, in September, really impacting on farmers and the ability to produce food. And again, in many countries, most affected, it's women, smallholder farmers, who are predominantly women, who are really on the front lines of this. And I think, and I'm sure people have touched on this, it really does come down to poverty as an issue. That is the main cause of food poverty. If people don't have stable incomes, then they are not able to afford food. If they're in precarious jobs, whether that's in Norwich or Nairobi, they're not going to be able to afford a healthy diet. We had a similar situation in 2008 in terms of the food crisis. And at that point, and we had a Labour government then, we had a much better global response that came together to agree international action and an international plan, and we need that similarly again. And I think we need a coordinated, holistic effort at the national level. What is the UK's plan to tackle food poverty, food insecurity, all of these issues that come together that are quite complex, and at the international level as well. I'll be in New York in a week's time at the UN General Assembly, and we really feel that this isn't on the agenda there enough, even though it's one of the biggest issues the world is facing right now. So just tell me if I've got, I was just going to touch on the end on solutions, because we sort out the problem, but there's lots of solutions.
Yeah, go on.
In the UK, we need to tackle this at the core, the root causes. Lots of cooperative solutions help with that. I think the Right to Food campaign is a really important one, because it seems a bit crazy that people don't even say that this is a fundamental right. And it's not just about people asking for something. This is something we have to deliver. We have to have invest in community solutions. So in Norwich, we have a community pantry that's just been set up. We do have food banks, looking at how do we help people into work, looking at the root causes of why they are having to go to a food bank in the first place. And I just wanted to touch on a couple of international examples, which I thought were quite interesting. So free school meals, currently the Nairobi in Kenya, they've agreed a massive rollout of that in Nairobi, so that every single child there, I think it's about 250,000, will get one hot meal a day. In Brazil, we've just seen Lula come back to power. There, when his government was in power before, they implemented the Bolsa Familia program, which people may be aware of, which is basically giving people cash in their pockets, which made direct cash transfers, which made a huge impact on fighting poverty. And they also enshrined the right to food in the constitution, which I think is a really important step forward. Now he's back in power, they are again investing in those kind of programs, again, which is about tackling poverty and addressing people's incomes rather than just providing food all the time. And India has one of the largest, I think it's the world's largest milk cooperative, which was actually set up in the 1940s, Amul Milk, which was created as a reaction to the fact that too much of local milk producers were being exploited by big conglomerates. So I think there's really interesting examples around the world. But at home with the Labour front bench, and we've got a brilliant front bench after this reshuffle we had before, but we've got an even stronger one now. We have set out great solutions. So Bridget Phillipson, free breakfast clubs in primary schools will make a big difference. And our whole agenda on the economic growth that we want to see, which has to be rooted in the cooperative values that we all believe in. So whether that's sorting out the benefit system, a social security system that actually works and protects people's dignities, investing in measures like those breakfast clubs is really important. So I think I'll probably end there. Sorry, I wasn't quite as prepared as I was hoping after the last hour with my car.
You've done very well, Alice. Don't worry, you don't need to say sorry. Thank you very much. You've done very, very well and given us some some statistics that has sent it home in terms of how many people in poverty. 8 million people in the UK are struggling to put food on the table. Obviously, you've gone on to mention about the UN Sustainable Development, in terms of the goals. And obviously, as a cooperative party, the second SDG in terms of zero hunger by 2030 is high on our agenda. So yes, you have covered it very, very well. So give yourself a hug. And thank you very, very much to all our speakers. Okay, we're going to go into Q&As now. I know, Saxon, bless you, you've had your hands up for a bit now. And I will bring you in, and then we can take more questions as we go along. So Saxon Spence, please, if you can let her unmute herself. Easy.
So thank you very much. In July, the Southwest Co-operative Party Council ran a very successful conference on food justice, and we got together the producers, the county, district council, the social enterprise, and one of our recommendations was that the cooperative party should produce a toolkit so that all our branches can take part in all these initiatives, pantries, food banks, saving. I'm in a scheme where we rescue food and make sure it's not wasted. So I just wonder what's happened to that, because I think this is a cause that really needs the Co-op Party thoroughly behind it. And our councillors have used the opportunity to, for instance, in Devon, to get the council to adopt a food strategy. So I think there's lots that we can do, but we do need to give people the tools. But I was interested in the kangaroo, because I have to say, I'm worried about those who the digitally dispossessed, who will seem to be even more left out. But I just wondered how people become eligible for the scheme. And are we going to link it with some of the productive aspects of food banks, recipes, encouraging fresh? And the final point is, how are we going to make sure people are not buying ultra-processed food, which is obviously something that's of great concern at the moment? Thank you.
Excellent, Saxon. Very brilliant questions. So speakers, I'll be able to help with some of them, as answer some as well. So speakers, just note, we're going to take the questions in threes, if that's okay, and then we come back to the speakers. Next, I've got Norman, and then I've got Anthony. So Norman, over to you.
I just wonder to what extent food poverty and hunger is a comparatively new thing. Say 30 years ago, was it there 30 years ago, but hidden and we didn't know about it? I mean, I went to school during the war, when one would imagine there was the possibility of hunger. No one went hungry, as far as I know. In my youth, I don't remember this being raised as an issue. I never knew anybody who went hungry, certainly not when I was at school. And this is not just idle curiosity, because I think if we're campaigning on this subject, I think we know the context. We need to know something about the context in which this has grown. Is it a recent thing, or was it always there but hidden? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norman. We'll come to your questions, but definitely the last few years, the pandemic, of course, the cost of living crisis, these are stark examples of why we are where we are. But we will definitely come to you when we're answering all the other questions. Anthony, over to you.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, clearly.
Yeah, cool, great. I've been affected by all of this throughout my life. So I was a 1970s kid and I had free school meals. But I seem to remember that the school meals that I got at primary school back then were completely different to the ones that they've been providing in more recent times. So I don't know whether that is a change in attitude or a change in the way that food is produced and cooked and looked at. That's quite a question. Yes, what the previous questioner was asking, ultra processed food. Yeah, that is a real problem, I think. But the thing that I really wanted to say was, I think that the danger is to look at food poverty in isolation, and it isn't an isolated issue. It needs a cooperative solutions, and it's a jigsaw, and they all need to be pulled together. So, for instance, in work poverty, yes, that is a scandal in itself. but so is the benefit system. I can't work because of mental health issues. I worked for 25 years in bioscience, and now I'm on disability benefits. That is a huge change, and it's one of the things that I'll never forgive Cameron for labeling me as a stranger, because I'm not. But the benefit system, as Alice has pointed out, is completely unfit for purpose, especially for disabled people. And that needs to change. And what Stephanie was saying about the uplift in the threshold to qualify for free school meals, that is also a scandal. That hasn't been uplifted in years. So more and more, so basically free school meals is withering on the vine, and that's intentional, and that's disgusting. But like I said, food poverty is a multifaceted problem, and it needs multifaceted solutions, and it should be across the whole of government. And when we have what we want come the end of next year, I hope that that Alice can be part of that and make sure that happens, because we need joined up thinking, and maybe we need a clean sheet of paper thinking as well, because it's that important.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and my hat goes out to you. And thank you so much for joining us this evening and for sharing and asking those questions. So we're going to start with a response to Saxon, who is happy to go first. We have someone who's still not muted. I think it's Norman. Norman, can you kindly mute yourself? That's it. Thank you very much. Okay, who would like to go first?
Happy to.
Yeah, let's go, Tanya.
Yeah, thank you, Saxon. Totally agree with everything. The app will hopefully enable people to buy fresh, which they can't get from a food bank. The problem around process as well, that we are hoping to develop the app. We are working with another third party who does all the educational material on apps as well in the West Midlands, because they could actually join us and do the recipes. You could get points if you bought certain food, etc. But and the people who access Kangaroo are referred from food banks or care professionals. We don't handpick who those clients will be. We're not the controller of that. We're just the provider of the app, and obviously the money that's put on there. As you said, not everybody has a mobile phone, and we have looked into that, but the feedback from all our food banks is that phones are not an issue. We've also looked at actually providing phones for people if they need it. The only issue possibly that is coming more alert is the internet, providing internet at people's homes. So again, that may be an issue in the future, but we could do a card option. The only reason we didn't want to do a card option was about making it more digital, and obviously VME is a digital co-op themselves and provide the till services at the co-ops, but there are options if required. So we did have somebody who was partially sighted, so obviously couldn't really use the app in the way we wanted, so we looked at options for that as well. But I totally agree, is how do we help people have a better quality of food, essentially. So I think that was, and then on the pantries, again, pantries are fine if there's surplus food. We're finding in the supermarkets, in the retail sector, surplus food is a minimum. During the pandemic, there was nothing. The food bank collection service had to be removed because people were taking things out of those collection services for themselves. So it became a real problem. Supermarkets need to have less surplus food to make their profits and to be more sustainable as well. So it's a big issue for the retailers. So we just feel that, you know, the clients bought a lot of the reduced to clear, a lot of the fruit and veg, therefore not enabling too much waste in the supermarkets. So hopefully I've answered some of your questions, but I haven't, just highlight the question again. There's a few people answered on the chat. I do apologise. I will reply afterwards.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Tanya. And just to also let you know, Saxon, regarding the toolkit for the cooperative food justice campaign, if you go onto our website and go onto our campaigns and click on food justice, you will be able to find information to guide you. We're encouraging every council to have a food champion. Then the food champions are responsible for sharing good practice, the toolkit that we're using, and the food champion for league. So not sure if you've got one in your council, but if you haven't, we can push for that as well. That's why we're having discussions like this and ensuring that people who are passionate about food and fighting for food justice become food champions for the cooperative in their councils. So thank you for thank you for that question, and thank you, Tanya. So Norman's question, Alice or Stephanie?
This is about hunger levels. Did Stephanie do?
Right, Stephanie's got her hands up.
So go ahead, Alice, with the hunger levels. But I think I'm going to reflect on how school food has changed. But Alice, go ahead with the stats.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. I'm definitely not an expert on the tracking of it. I think definitely since I think there's an issue about data and tracking and how much is known about hunger levels. And I think certainly there needs to be, and when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals and the tracking, and the ONS is meant to do a lot of that at the national level, there are a lot of gaps in the picture. So I would have to look into a bit more detail into it, but I don't think the UK sufficiently started monitoring it in enough detail until fairly recently. Obviously, in the past, in the 20s and 30s, there was, a lot of action around tackling hunger and hunger marches, etc. But I think it was really after the 2008 crisis that it came more into public consciousness. But I think what I would say is, austerity happened. I don't think it's a coincidence that levels have gone higher since then. We've seen it this week with the school buildings. If you don't fix the roof when the sun is vaguely shining, like you can't do things in the future. So I do think, and if you look at the Red Cross, for example, I think it was about 2013 that they started providing that in the UK. There was a big media splash. I used to be a councillor in Southwark when UNICEF said it was going to start providing kind of food relief in the UK in recent years. Now, I don't think we'd seen that in the past. So I think that does point to the kind of unprecedented situation we are in right now. And maybe just to pick up on the last question, I've got it. I do think I think you're right, and I was hoping I kind of spoke to that we have to look at food poverty not as a standalone issue, but as a holistic, whole of society issue that touches so many areas. One of the pilots I worked in when I was a councillor in Southwark, and I led quite a bit of work around this after COVID, was community pilots that were going out, and we did work with the Co-operative Party around this, and having door-to-door conversations with people who were having food parcels delivered to really understand from their perspective what were the issues, why had they had to turn to this, what were the issues that they were really facing. So looking at kind of a data-driven but also a very qualitative approach to having those community conversations to understand what was really happening, because I think each case is individual, but there are some common themes throughout. So that is what we're doing to tackle poverty, what we're doing to help people who can't work for whatever reason it is, and provide that safety net, which is frankly severely lacking at the moment.
Shall I jump in with a couple of things, just a couple of observations? The Food Foundation, which is a think tank looking at the whole food system, will be able to give you some data on tracking food insecurity. So it's worth diving in and having a look at all their tables and interactive pieces on their website. Interesting, Alice, that you mentioned UNICEF and Southwark. We were the charity that was delivering the food that Rees-Mogg was so upset about. And I have to say that when he was rather unkind about us in the House of Commons, we got an enormous amount of donations, which meant we could feed more families. So, he's our top fundraiser. The other thing to say to Anthony's point about whether school food has changed since your day, Anthony, yes, it has. And it's changed both in two ways. So like you, I remember family dining back in the day, but I also remember lunch and meat fritters and some really woeful food. So the one big thing that happened, the most exciting thing, of course, you'll remember Jamie Oliver, who blazed in 2005 and said there are standards for dog food, but not for school food. So he did an amazing thing by shining a big light on that, which others have followed, like School Food Matters. We came in 2007 on his coattails. But yeah, school food standards are enshrined in law. But the piece that's missing is the piece that I spoke about in my presentation, which is monitoring and compliance. And until we fix that, what gets measured gets done. And if people don't look at what's being served in schools, schools are trying really hard, but they've got lots of other stuff to do. So let's start asking some questions of school leaders and school governors, and give them a sort of a requirement to do that. But also government has to work harder on this too. I mean, they've been planning to update these standards since 2016. It was a promise in the Child Obesity Plan. It still hasn't happened. So we're pushing hard because they haven't kept step with many schools that only want to serve vegetarian food because their students are demanding that. There is a climate movement here within young people. We need to be able to support that. So there's lots of work to be done around that. I think I possibly could stop there, but I could go on forever, but I'm sure other people want to come in, so I'll be quiet.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I like the bit, what gets measured gets done. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Right, we've got 2 more questions. I've been advised I've got to finish at 7, so I want to take as many questions as possible. This is a very, very interesting topic here. So David and then Ruth.
Hello there. Can everybody hear?
Loud and clear, sir.
I frequently go to Sweden as I have relatives in Sweden. And in Sweden, they have a model where the kids right away up till 18 have a free breakfast if they want it, a free lunch if they want it, and a free tea if they want it. And the schools are open 12 hours a day. So, and the parents get a choice of menu to decide if for ethnic or religious reasons that anything's unsuitable, and it rotates on a 3-week basis. So could we take a look at trying to develop something similar to the Swedish model? And second, an unusual question, if this food's good enough for our kids, surely it should be good enough for the members of Parliament. So should the House of Commons have an identical menu to the schools have? That's it.
Thank you very much, David. 100%. Yeah, we'll give them mushy peas and some few carrots. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Right, Ruth, over to you.
Thank you. I'm a county councillor in Derbyshire, which is Tory run, and we've just seen them put the price of school meals in primary schools up from £2.30 last term to £3.25 this term. It's a rise of 95 pence a day, and the initial response from parents is that none of them practically can afford school meals for their children. So we've got a brilliant in-house directly provided school meals service, but unfortunately the council are pricing it out of existence. So until we get some government support so that we can have free school meals for every child, which would be wonderful, but there's absolutely no way that most councils can do that without full government funding, then we do need to look at price and put pressure on the councils that are doing really high school meal prices and not subsidising at all. I'm also quite worried by the Labour Party's policy on free breakfast, which is great, but a lot of families, the kids are getting themselves up if they're really struggling, and they're not getting to school in time for breakfast. So actually the lunch is what's really important and gives them a hot meal that they all have. So I'd really appreciate some thoughts on those issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Someone sent me a direct message on here saying it's not just free breakfast meals, but free school meals, full stop. So totally accept that. And I think it's one of the main reasons why the Co-operative Party are campaigning. I mean, we're looking at our SDG goals for number 2 in terms of making sure and ensuring that we incorporate that goal into domestic law, because if that's done, then obviously that sends a powerful message, doesn't it, to the UK's commitment in terms of fighting food poverty. So I will now use the last 3 minutes. We've got between now and the last 2 minutes before 7 o'clock for all the speakers to give us a minute wrap quickly. And then if you want to answer the last 2 questions, then that's fine, even though I know the second one is more of a comment. But back to yourselves, and I'll start with our prospective parliamentary candidate, Alice.
Gosh, well, thank you. I think I'll probably end on the kind of local context. I do think this is going to be a really key issue at the general election whenever we get that. I do think when I talk to people here, I was asked, and I did an interview recently on TV, yes, but are food prices really rising? Some people are saying, you know, they're not. I don't hear that from anyone I speak to in Norwich. No one is saying to me things are getting cheaper and I can afford it. People are really feeling the pinch when they go to the supermarket. And I think there's been a big focus on cost of energy, and that will continue. But I think the cost of food is going to get an even bigger issue. And I do think free breakfast clubs is a really important policy that we have. Obviously, Labour hasn't set out all of its policies yet. And the job of Co-op and other people is to lobby for the things you want to see there. So I think there's a really important conversation for us to be having around what does it look like to tackle food poverty under a Labour government. But I certainly will continue to do what I have been doing, talking to people about the impact, meeting community organisations who are really on the front line doing amazing work in Norwich and across the country, and looking at what can we do practically as candidates, but also hopefully if we get into government to really tackle this. So thanks for inviting me again tonight.
Excellent, Alice. Thank you very much. Tanya.
Thank you all. I think we all should also recognise that people say food prices, but we're the cheapest in, the cheapest in Europe. People in Europe pay much more for their food than they do in this country. And I think sometimes we go away from the real issues. But I agree with Anthony, in a way, it is a jigsaw puzzle. How do we put all this together? So, people who have access to food through the Kangaroo app, how do they then take their products home to make a breakfast? Because the lack of education of how people can cook at home is a real issue that we're finding. There's massive generation gaps. Some people can cook at home and grow food at home, but majority don't have access. So we can give children, it's a little bit, we did a project around children could bring a lunchbox to school. Somebody just put a cake in there because that's all they had in their cupboard. They had nothing else. So there's a big area of education, which we keep saying. But, from our point of view, Kangaroo is only a small solution. It's a part of this puzzle, which I quite like Anthony's view on that, because how do we connect? And with the credit unions as well, we haven't mentioned credit unions here or finance, but the food banks, that holistic approach is about everything. It's not just access to food, it's access to finance and lots of many other things. But thank you for the opportunity tonight. If you wish to have a look on our website, kangaroo.coop, anybody can donate as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Stephanie.
Okay, I'm obviously going to say that please, Cooperative Party, get behind universal free school meals. I mean, we absolutely understand that breakfast is key, but children are required to be in school at lunchtime. It's part of their learning, it's part of their school day. We know that the Labour Party still hasn't come out with any clarity when it comes to universalism, and we know it's going to be a challenge, but we're going to be pushing really hard on that for stigma-free school meals. It is ridiculous that we have a two-tiered system, that others people who are on low incomes, and it is ridiculous that the threshold is so low. We've got to stop tinkering around with this threshold and see the multiple benefits of free school meals on children's health, their well-being, their education attainment. So if we can stop talking about poverty in this context, because that makes it a time-sensitive issue, which is about the cost of living crisis. We're delighted that the London Mayor came out with universalism in primary schools, but it is framed around poverty and cost of living, which makes it vulnerable. We need to start to talk about the multiple benefits of universalism. So I absolutely encourage you to start thinking about this as far as your commitments, and we will be launching the School Food Review Manifesto on the 19th of September, and we'll be shouting very loudly about that beautiful Venn diagram, which will get delicious food and nutritious food so that children can thrive.
Absolutely, delicious food so that children can thrive. Couldn't agree more. So thank you all very much, speakers, and thank you for everyone who's joined us today. Please continue to email and tweet whatever you've heard today and tag us into your tweet. The Co-op Party has a huge number of online and physical events taking place this autumn. So you can find out more on our event pages of our website. This weekend, we are holding our Putting Equalities at the Heart of Cooperation, hearing from Annalisa Dodds and Harriet Hammond and other great cooperators involved in promoting diversity and equality. So please do check your emails for details of the full program for the Co-op conference as well, coming up at 24th and 25th of September, I believe. And finally, do remember that the team at the Cooperative Party HQ are here to support all of our members. So reach out to us and for more information and advice. So please look after yourselves. Thank you all so much for joining us, and stay safe. Take care and thank you.